Great. So hi everyone. I am Caroline Bowditch and I have the honour and privilege of being the CEO at Arts Access Victoria, and lots of you are very familiar with me, and for some of you I'm new, so welcome to this space with us. I want to begin by acknowledging that I am coming to you from the lands of the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nations, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and express my gratitude for continuing to allow us to make art and be creative on the spaces and places that they have cared for and maintained for so many hundreds of thousands of years. I want to just introduce my colleagues that are in the space with us from Arts Access Victoria, who will also be talking this afternoon. So Aisha, who lots of you will be familiar with, who is what I call our admin guru and will be answering lots of your emails or phone calls. You'll meet Aisha at that point. Sarah Hubolt,
Hello.
who you'll hear more from in a little bit, and Sarah is one of our funding advisors, amongst a myriad of other things, and creative producer as well, alongside being her own amazing artistic self. And Tanya Smith, who is our manager of art services partnerships, and Tanya is also one of our advisors on this program. So we will hear from all those people in a little bit. I just wanted to let people know that we're recording this afternoon session for those people that can't be here. And if you would rather that your face weren't captured on the screen, please feel free to switch your camera off as you wish. And also just to say, please exist in this space, in these digital spaces, in the ways that you are most comfortable. Feel free to move around or stretch or switch cameras off or do whatever you need to. It's great to have you here. This afternoon is an information session or a question and answer session about our new Accelerate grants, which came online last week and were launched at our artist gathering, and were launched by the Minister for Cultural Industries, Danny Pearson. This is the first time ever that Arts Access Victoria has had what they call devolved funding, so money that's just been given to us to give to artists. And what that is allowing us to do is to try out and learn and find out how we can make the application process as accessible as possible for our target audience, which is all of you, so for deaf and disabled artists. This is kind of a pilot project is what we're calling it, and hopefully we will be inundated by applications, and Creative Victoria will see that there is a huge need for application processes like this, and that there are artists, amazing artists like all of you, that want to make work and are making work, and they will absolutely, of course, run the program again. So this is a first, and it's really exciting. It sort of builds on the fact that in 2020 we were able to work with Creative Victoria to secure some ring-fenced funding just for deaf and disabled artists. And again, that was the first time that had ever happened, and they are planning on maintaining that into the future, and hopefully some of you were able to access some of that funding. These grants, as I said, came about because yeah, they saw a need and realised that AAV could support them in delivering it to maybe people that wouldn't have been able to access their systems in the same way. So we are here with Accelerate, these Accelerate grants, and this afternoon is really about finding out more about them. How do you apply for them? What can you apply for? How do you go through that process? How can we support you? And also to answer any questions that you might have. So I am going to hand over to my colleague Tanya, who's going to tell us a bit more about the two different streams that are involved in the Accelerate grants. Over to you, Tanya.
Great, thank you, Caroline. So there's two types of Accelerate grants. One of the grants is called Nurture. And these grants are the amount of $5,000 plus $2,500 for access costs. So that's a total of $7,500. So you get that amount in total. The grants are really for individual artists, although we are open to hearing from you if you work as part of a duo or a group. But we really wanted them to be for individual artists because we want artists to be paid well for their work. They're for a period of about 2 months. And so it's almost like a wage for you for 2 months to do whatever you need to do to continue or begin being an artist. So it's about sustaining you for that 2-month period. But you might want to buy a computer. You might need a computer for your work. You might need a phone for your work, a smartphone. You might need to just pay for your daily living, your rent, your food, your bills, so that you can concentrate on making your work and sustaining yourself. So you don't need to work on a particular project necessarily, but it's about nurturing you and sustaining you as an artist. So it's really open. We will check back after a couple of months to see where you're at and just to evaluate how that funding helped support you. But they're very open grants. Now, the Create grants are a larger amount of money. They're $15,000 plus an additional $5,000 for access costs. So you get a total of $20,000. These are more geared towards collectives or groups working or teams, but they're also open for individual artists. And the Create grants are more specific because we want you to work on a project. It's about a 2 to 3 month time period as well, but we really want you to be able to work specifically on a new artwork, series of artworks, performance, or any type of art form that you're working in. And the Create grants have an extra criteria different to the Nurture, is that we want your works to have access at its centre. And my colleague Sarah will be able to talk about that in a second. So I'll leave that aspect of it to Sarah. But yeah, for both grants, we're also prioritising people who haven't applied for a grant before or haven't received significant funding recently for their projects. But that doesn't mean that someone who has received funding before is ineligible. So we want everyone to apply. There's a short time period for these. So we've simplified the application form and the first round closes on the 25th of October. But we'll let you know within 3 weeks how you went with the funding, and we'll provide feedback for all applicants if you want feedback from it. You can only apply for these grants once, unfortunately. We wish we were able to support people to apply again and again. But yeah, there's 3 rounds, so you can choose to apply sooner, or you can wait and apply in December or February for the Nurture grants. But we will let you know within 3 weeks how you went, and we'll give you feedback, and that might help you if you're applying for future funding. I'll pass over now to Sarah, who will be able to talk a bit what we mean about embedding access in your project, and particularly for those Create grants. Thanks, Sarah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Hubolt. I am
in southeast Melbourne on Bunwarang land. Nice to be here in the Zoom room with you all. I'm a creative producer at Arts Access Victoria. So part of the criteria of these grants, and particularly as Tanya said, the Create grant, is around aesthetics of access and authentic storytelling. So over the last decade or so, there's been a trend in creating work in terms of honouring our bodies and our experiences within the creating process itself. So aesthetics of access, aesthetic access, is a term where you can actually physically see or experience the access within the work itself. And access is so intrinsic to our culture as deaf, disabled, neurodivergent artists, arts workers. So it's around thinking about how our own access requirements can be used as a creative development tool and how that might be seen in the presentation of the work itself, rather than being tapped on at the end once the work has already been made. It's a really exciting creative development tool that has been practiced in various forms, in visual arts, in performance work, theatre, dance, circus. And it's not, there's no perfect way of doing it. There's no right way of doing it because it comes from our authentic experiences of access. So some examples might be having somebody who uses Auslan as the way in which they speak in the performance. So you include your own language within the performance, or an Auslan interpreter, your access worker, in the performance. Similarly with audio description, you might use audio description as the basis to create the concepts of the work, or create the style in which something is portrayed. So you're seeing our parts of our culture in the work itself. Auslan and audio description are kind of easy go-tos. We recognise that there are actually lots of different forms of access, and it's really diverse within our community. So what would be really exciting as well is to think about how other access is represented aesthetically within the work, and especially within that creative development phase, using what we've got to create the work itself. If you've got any questions, I'll pause in a second and feel free to ask them. Authentic storytelling is, again, the similar thing, using what we've got as the basis to start telling the narrative, whether that's linear, whether that's abstract narrative, whether that's a concept in visual art, or a through line within a theatre show, or within the choreography that informs the choreography within dance, for example, or the lyrics in music. Or it's starting with what we know and what we value within our disability culture. And it's around thinking about how we live our lives. So, you know, we're not always talking about what defines disability culture, what defines authentic storytelling. So it's still something to kind of go, oh, what is that, and how do I relate to that? And start with yourselves, and then start with the pride that you have within how you live your life. What are the things that are unique to you, or what are the things that interest you about the way in which we are and the way in which we be in the room, in the space, in the world, the way in which we work. And the stories told from our perspectives. So authentic storytelling, what the impact that it has when we start with authentic storytelling is it really shows the world from our perspective for our audience, exhibition goers. So it's really kind of highlighting, well, we kind of see it this way, or this is the way that we'd like to comment on this particular theme. So that's really important in terms of power relationships and in terms of putting forward, you know, something that others may not necessarily always understand. So that's a kind of impact and the byproduct of authentic storytelling. You know, I spent a lot of time in my own arts career in New Zealand, where I was told over and over and over again to always take a backpack of your artist tools with you and know what's in your history of the community in which you work. And
these things like aesthetic access and authentic storytelling fit into that backpack of tools as creatives when we go forward and make work. So whether in other projects you choose to use those tools or not, in this grant initiative specifically, we're looking at those as criteria to help encourage thinking around how do we use aesthetics of access and how do we tell our stories. So if you have any questions about it, we're totally open to exploring it with you. And I guess part of, should I pause now for a question, or should I talk about how to actually apply for the grants?
Just pause. If you can pause for a sec, Sarah. Thank you for all of that information. It's amazing. Just to check, Steve's just arrived as our second interpreter. So I don't know if you two want to do a hand changeover. Perfect.
Yes,
Great.
please. I can't see him. So is he on the screen now?
Yeah, he's absolutely on the screen.
Thanks so much for doing that.
If we can just change our spotlighting, perfect. Thank you so much. Hello, Steve. Welcome. So, Sarah, what would be really good to talk a bit about is just how do people apply, and how can AAV help? How can people make contact with you and Aisha and Tanya? Actually, before we do that, Sarah, Tyler has a hand up, has a question. Tyler, do you want to ask your question?
Hey, yeah, how you doing? Thanks everyone. Maybe this will be covered in the next section. I'm wondering how you would like communicate some of those, like sorry, give me a sec. Like aesthetics in your application. Maybe you've given the example of like Auslan and lingual communicable sort of stuff, which is really important. But what about say more like neurodiversity, or like you don't have to go into specifics, but I understand the concept, but I'm wondering how you would communicate that to someone who's looking at your submission.
Yeah, no problem at all. So I guess feel confident that the assessors of these grants will understand what aesthetics of access is, because it's a criterion and because this is, an Arts Access Victoria grant. So you don't need to spend heaps of time on going, well, aesthetics of access is this, and I want to use it because of these reasons, because, our disability culture is cool. We already know that kind of stuff, but it would be interesting to hear from you in the way in which you'd like to communicate it, what access points you'd like to focus on or what you're interested in exploring. This is just an idea to put your best foot forward, because it is still a grant. You want to be able to clearly or in your own way explain what access you're using and why it's important to you. So I'll go through the way in which you can apply, and then that might be a little bit clearer as well. So there's several ways in which to apply for this grant. The really exciting thing about the Accelerate grants is that we're super interested to be as accessible as possible and really create a very open and diverse way in which people can apply. We've seen time and time again that when you focus on written applications, that doesn't suit certain people, and we're really interested in going, well, what method of application does suit you? So we do have the traditional written Word document form. We have a website form in which you can fill out, and all of these will be the same questions and the same things you need to answer. So you can do it within a Word document. You can apply within a web form. You can apply within audio, like an MP3 or any kind of audio file, and send that through to us, whether that's through file sharing or email, depending on how long it is. You can also apply via a video format as well. And again, file sharing or email. I imagine file sharing is most suitable to that. You can also apply through interviewing. So we've set up a try booking system where you nominate a time to be interviewed. So if you feel like writing or recording anything is not particularly the best way for you to apply and get your points across, make a time with us and we will interview and ask you the same questions. It will be really informal. It will be with us, so staff members of Arts Access Victoria. Phil is another staff member who might be involved in those interviews. So you could meet us and we'll ask you the questions. And then we'll give you that recording to review, to say, are you happy with this? And then you'll submit it to the grant. The deadline is the 25th of October, and those interviews will be held, if you choose to go through the interviewing phase, they'll be held between the 18th and 22nd of October. And then 25th of October, that is a Monday, is when it's all due. We're also available for grants, advice and assistance next week as well, which is the week of the 11th to the 15th or 16th. So we'll be around. You can call us, email us. You can also make a Zoom meeting request as well. So we take our applications in Auslan, in Braille. So it is really which way is best for you. When it comes to writing the applications, if you choose to go down the Word document writing application format, what we also acknowledge is that sometimes some people find it a bit more difficult to write in really long sentences or get their points across in like that really traditional grants language. So you still want to put your best foot forward with this grant, but what we also acknowledge is if you need to write in bullet points, for example, because that helps clarify things in your mind in order to get it on the paper, fine. That's absolutely fine. So we have 3 rounds, as Tanya was saying, and there's two grants. There's the Create grant and the Nurture grant. Similar process for both of the grants, and we're here to help you as well in terms of preparing for it. So info@artsaccess.com.au is the email address, and our phone numbers. Aisha, could you maybe tell us the phone numbers?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So you can call us or text us. So our main phone number is 039699 8299. And if you want to text us, you can text us at 0477 860 955. And I'll send it in the chat, and also I'll send everyone an email with these numbers as well. So you're welcome to text if you prefer texting, and I'll get back to you that way as well.
Brilliant.
Awesome. And just to go back to your question, Tyler, around aesthetics of access and different types of access that you might start with for a creative development. You mentioned neurodivergence. So I was just thinking about Prue Stevenson, for example, and her work around stimming. So stim your heart out. So that would be an example of aesthetics of access, using something that is part of our being, part of our body, and putting it into a way in which you describe that for a funding application, but also it's a choreographic language or so. So it could be a sentence around what is the thing that you'd like to focus on and how would you like to use it? And what would the audience see, you know? Have a think through that if that helps.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. We have got some questions coming at us, which is brilliant. Gemma, I'd like to call on you for the first question, if you would be so kind.
Hi there, my name is Gemma. I just wanted to ask in regards to, so I belong to a collective and we're interested in applying. And the beauty of our collective is that we all identify as having different chronic illnesses and disabilities. So if we were to focus a project, how exactly would we do that? What would we want to pitch? Or would you recommend that we focus on particular things that are common to all of us? Or I mean, it sounds wrong, but I don't want to prioritize someone else's illnesses and then sort of not acknowledge other ones. What would you suggest?
Sarah, do you have any initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, so, deaf, disabled, neurodivergent people don't always have to tell the story of disability or of illness or health. We might tell stories of love or tragedy, but we have an authentic story around that in terms of the bodies that we are in, and the experiences that we have in life. Similarly, with the aesthetics of access, it could influence movement style. It could influence the set and prop design, for example. So it might not necessarily be the thing that you focus on and go, hey, this is my illness or this is my disability. It could be, actually, I'm taking that experience and I'm using it creatively to develop this another way of thinking or looking. So there might be a second part to your question that I'm sort of feeling from you, and is that around, I'm wondering if this might be helpful, is to start with the people in the room in terms of the aesthetics of access and authentic storytelling. So we might want to tell the story of the wider disability community, or we might want to tell everyone's story, but you might choose to go, okay, well, this is the story that we really want to tell from the expertise in the room, So when we don't have that expertise in the room, so when we don't have, when we want to use a device and a language like Auslan or audio description, but we don't have a native users of those languages and access tools in the room, then it's important to factor in a cultural consultant. So have a think about that when you're sifting through what creative development process you'd like to use. I don't know if that's helpful. Feel free to ask a clarifying question if there's more.
We definitely have the ability to focus on Auslan because due to the lived experience of one of the members of our collective. Specifically, we will be focusing on queer BIPOC experiences because all of us identify as either queer, Black, and people of color. And Indigenous. So it's a really diverse group of people, even though there's only 4 of us.
Yeah.
And and we want to make sure that we honor everyone's stories. And of course, we're very well versed with sensitivity reading, so that we would make sure and check in with each other that we don't tell stories that are not ours to tell.
That sounds super exciting.
Thanks so much, Gemma and Sarah. Sarah, we've got a backlog of questions and I'm going to bring people in and anyone, so Tanya, Sarah, Aisha, whoever feels most relevant can kind of come at it. So Maddie, you had a question, your hand's up. So I'm going to come to you first.
Hi.
Hi.
I am also from a collective and I'm the grant writer. That's my job. But I do think that our application would potentially benefit from being composite in some ways. So where I write the grant and I give you a written thing, but then you also get to talk to the founder of our collective who has some really beautiful ideas. So whether she could potentially do the interview as well. Is that allowed? Are we allowed to approach it from those 2 areas? So we get my expertise as the writer, but then she, who is quite busy and probably doesn't have time to write it, could potentially speak to you in person, just clarify anything about our application.
My instinct would be to start with the interview with whoever needs to be there.
Yep.
And probably then if you needed a follow-up, or you may just choose to do the interview, Maddie, with as many as your collective as feels relevant.
Yeah, I suppose both of us could also come to the interview.
Yeah. That would be my instinct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Louise.
Thanks, Carolyn. Auspicing's a really effective way, especially for these over $10,000, to manage things and decrease stress.
Yep.
What's the intentions there?
So we can also, Tanya, you were going to say, yeah, you go.
Hi, Louise. It's Tanya here. So we can do something similar to auspice for these grants. It wouldn't actually be called auspicing because we're giving the grants away. So it changes the terminology from being auspicing, but we can do the same thing. So what we can do is pay you the portion of your artist fee if you're successful, however much of that funding you want to take as your personal artist fee as income. And then we can pay your expenses directly to the supplier so that you're not getting that full $20,000 if it's the larger grant into your bank account for tax purposes. We'll pay you your artist fee. We'll pay it in installments or up front or at the end, however you'd like to receive it. But we'd need to pay you out the full amount of the grant or all your expenses in the grant within about 3 months, because we'll be reporting back to Creative Victoria in June next year.
And just on that point, is there the possibility to look at other auspicing agency like Auspicious Arts or yeah?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I'd have to check up on some details for you and get back to you, but I'll check up on that and follow up. But I don't think there's a problem with paying that out to a third party auspicing arrangement.
And so the funds, when do they actually have to be used by? You said like
yeah. So what we're going to do is, so we want to limit the administrative burden on these grants on artists. We want to make these artist centered. So we will check back on you after about 2 to 3 months, and we'll have an informal chat to evaluate how you found the process of those few months of having that funding. You don't have to have finished anything that you've outlined in your application, so you can still continue working on the project. So it'll be like a project milestone catch up. But yeah, we will need to do that follow-up chat with you after a couple of months, and we will need to have paid out the grant to you. So the funding will be gone after that 2 to 3 months period, but then you can continue working on what you've started. Absolutely.
All right, great.
Thanks, Louise. Next we've got Woz. Hi, Woz.
Hey. How
Hi.
you going?
Good.
Not sure. I think it's probably for Tanya. I've got 2 sort of technical questions. One is if you are unsuccessful in the first round, you're saying we can't apply again for the second round. How does that work? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, Woz. So it's a bit of a tough decision you sort of have to make, because you have to decide, do I want to go in for the funding in the round that closes on the 25th of October? Do I want to go for the round that closes on the 6th of December? Or do I, if you're applying for Nurture, there'll be a third round of the Nurture grants that closes, I think, about the 7th of February. Yeah. One thing I do know is that there's a bit of a gap at the moment in funding, but I do know that Creative Victoria will have more individual project grants coming up in December. They've just got to be confirmed on their calendar, but there will be other grant opportunities with them in December. Some more music grants coming up as well in around October, November with Creative Victoria. So there will be more funding out there beyond the Accelerate grants. But yeah, unfortunately, yeah, you have to decide which stream and which round you want to apply for.
Yeah. Okay. Just to clarify that, just a touch further, are there limits on how many successful applications in each round?
Yeah, so we've got 12 Nurture grants and 4 Create grants. So there'll be 4
Each
nurture.
round.
No, the whole program. So there'll be, in this first round, we'll be giving out 4 nurture grants and 2 create grants. The December round will have 4 nurture grants and 2 create grants. And then the February round will have 4 nurture grants.
Okay. I'm not going to worry about my other question then. Thanks.
Thanks, Woz. Next, we've got Nat. Hi, Nat.
Sorry, I'm muting myself. I've actually got a couple of questions. One is about embedding access in your project. I've got a long-standing project that very much has my own neurodiversity embedded in it, and I'd like to create more work in this Lullaby project I do. But one of the things I'm really keen to do is try and work on developing a relaxed version of my live performances. And so I guess what I'm wondering is what would be better to sort of emphasize when talking about access in the application? Is it more the access that is embedded in the work I'm creating, or is it reaching audiences that have access needs? Or like, is both good, or should I focus on one? Or
Does anyone want to have a crack at that? I have an instinct, but Sarah, do you have an instinct on this one?
Yeah, I do, but I want to hear yours first.
my instinct, Nat, is both. My instinct is to go with both, is to talk about the access that you created for yourself, and then also talking about you've embedded this so far, and actually now what you want to do is take this to a new audience.
Yeah, okay, great, awesome.
Which is probably what your gut was telling you as well. So
yeah, brilliant. And then I just had one more question, which was you mentioned before that the create grants, in some instances they're appropriate for individuals, but as mainly for collectives. Like, how do you, because I'm a few years in career wise, where should I apply?
I guess it's really about, is it about creating something new? So you're talking about, I suppose for me, create is about a new thing. So maybe building on Lullaby into a relaxed thing is about an evolution of that, which in a way could be new. And it's really thinking about how would you, what would be the difference made from 20,000 compared to 7.5? What would it allow you to do in terms of skilling yourself up to open that up to a new audience?
Yeah, cool. Or maybe I'll give it a bit more thought and write to you or something.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks
absolutely.
so much.
Chat to this mob. They're amazingly wise.
Yes, they are.
Tara had a question about is there a min or max limit on the written word and the audio and visual video? There is, absolutely. So I think from memory it's 300 words per question, and it's up to 3 minutes of video per question. Someone correct me if I'm getting that wrong.
Yes, 300 words for, well, we've said approximates because we don't want people watching the word counts. The create grants have a 500 word limit or approximation for the second question. And in terms of the video, so yeah, around those sort of few minutes, we don't, we're not setting limits on it, but we want applicants to also be mindful of the time limitations of the assessment panel. So when thinking about your support material as well, potentially assessors won't have an hour to watch, say, filmed performances, an hour of footage of your performance. They might only be able to watch, the first 5 to 10 minutes. But we haven't yet, as I said, put strict limits on them.
And one of the reasons for that is that some people take longer to speak or to present and communicate. So we're mindful of that, and that's part of our ethos.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. Tyler, did you have another question? Your hand's up on your little screen.
Yeah. I think it was sort of raised before. I just wanted to get some clarification. But first off, can you like mix and match? Like video sounds great for me. It means I can concentrate. But also like I would submit some written stuff because that makes sense. Like here's some info about stuff I've done in the past. Is that cool? Like mix that sort of stuff? Yep. Yeah, I have a specific question. Like, so I'd like to take my project that I'm doing for myself around like my own access, and then like so I work with fellas who have just come out of prison, like mob, and I would love to develop my project and then run. Would they be workshops? It sounds a little bit terse, but that terse idea of like teaching and like here's creative means to like specifically for me like to access trauma and mental health stuff. Would that be covered? You know, like that sort of extended idea of the access being like working with other peeps. Like I use the word working, but you know what I mean. Like instead of just this passive like audience artist, it's like we're collaborative. Like you know with mob stuff, like we're often working together. Like so, how does that work? It's a bit of a ramble, but yeah.
Not at all. Tanya, did you were looking like you had a response to that? Tyler, I think absolutely. I think that the point about these grants really from our perspective is as much as they're about making sure that cash gets into the hands of artists, it's also about finding out the sorts of things that artists are going to want to do. And so coming to us with a project like that, Tyler, just kind of shows that it's not just about creating work, but it's also about collaborating with others through a workshop setting, potentially to lead to something else. And I think this is the other thing is who knows what might come out of a project like that. It might lead to, I don't know, an exhibition or a live performance or a book or a whatever it might be. So it's kind of, I think it's absolutely, yeah, I would say it sits within the whole thing. I have Johnny's iPad wants to ask a question. That's just what's on my screen.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm a co-writer of songs and a performer and a musician, and I was going to do a recording of an album, and I was just wondering is it suitable for us to, because I co-write with a partner.
That's me.
Yeah, and I was just wondering,
what kind of songs?
What sort of songs? Are we limited to what sort of songs, or we just do what we like to do?
We do original songs.
We do original songs.
Yeah. We definitely wouldn't prescribe what songs you record.
What subject?
No subjects?
The subject of the story, you know, like you're saying that you have to, you know, tell a story, some sort of a story.
Yeah,
that's what I get.
Yeah, I think for you guys, it's about the story that you feel like you need to tell, and also really telling the stories that are authentic to you. So, and Johnny, you do that already. So I think, yeah, I don't think. Does someone else, any other thoughts? Sarah, have you got thoughts on this? Because you were talking about the aesthetic access point.
I agree, Caroline. You don't get too bogged down and like, oh, what's an authentic story? What is that framework? If it comes from you, your being, your heart, your mind, you know, that's the ground that you stand on.
Oh, right. Thank you.
So that's our creative. That's us being creative anyway, isn't it?
Yeah. The reason why we talk about authentic stories and authentic voices is because we see a lot of stories told about us without our involvement. So if we have our involvement in it, then it's going to have something authentic in it. So that's the reason why it's part of the criteria, is because there's too many stories told that, you know, are told without us.
Okay, so we write country songs, retro country, so there's always usually a story in our songs anyway.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yep.
Thanks. Good
Thank
luck.
you very much. Thank you.
I don't get to assess, so I can just say good luck to everybody. Pamela had a question.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Hi there. Nice to meet you all. So I'd like to apply to the Create for funding for, well, I'm kind of toward the end of the development of the project. So I'm looking to exhibit, and I'm wondering if we need to have a gallery booking for our proposal. Is that a helpful thing to have already there to tell you where it's going to be shown and how it can be accessed, etc.? That's one of my questions. I have a few actually.
It's a really good
do
question.
today.
And I think it's quite similar to a question that Adam and Goulet also have about exhibiting work and what we can do. I suppose one of the things, and Tanya, feel free to jump in on this, is that Create is really about creating something new. So, and maybe that is about, I mean, that can be pretty loose about what is new. Like, is it about you're going to create a collection from work that you've already got and exhibit it? So the new thing is the exhibition of work that you've generated. I would say ideally it would be great to know who that's going to happen with, so that you are much more targeted. If your Create grant is about creating that exhibition, it's the sense of where it's going to go.
Right, yeah.
Feels important.
Okay, all right. And framing can go toward framing and things like that. It's still in development, but it seemed there was the categories of for development and then for exhibitions. So I wasn't sure whether I should apply for development, seeing as it's, you know, well on the way, or whether I should just now look at how I'm going to exhibit.
It's a good question.
So,
because in my head, almost it feels a bit nurtury to me if it's about getting work framed or whatever, so that you can, to give you the money to get the materials to do that.
right.
But I don't know. Tanya, Sarah, thoughts on this one?
And with the framing, I'm wanting light boxes actually, because it involves light through image and that sort of thing. So,
yeah, Pamela, that sounds absolutely that's eligible to use the funding for that. We can maybe, I'm just conscious of the time, so if you wanted to, we can make a time actually to catch up and we can talk through some of the specifics of the project. And
that would be great.
Yeah, yeah.
I really like that. Thank you.
Excellent. We'll follow up with you.
As a general, it might be worth thinking about your budget and going, okay, actually, I would like these things covered. And that might also assist in going, do I want to go for the little grant or the big grant?
Yes, I was wondering about where to put, do we put that in the project description, or saying this will be allocated here and this will be allocated there? There's another, I have a collaborator too who does sound, so it's going to be sound, and he works with a blind scientist, and that's and I'm sight impaired, and that's where our idea has come from. And he converts science data into sound for his research, so it's all involving there. So he would also be, I would be the applicant and would like to allocate his payment for his work.
Yeah, absolutely. So the budgets are tick boxes or circle or highlight, whatever's easiest for you, but we don't need the amounts of what you're delineating for where.
Oh, okay. All
and the
right.
expectation is that you're paying yourself and all the artists working on your project. We want you all to be paid and sustained to make your artwork.
Well, that's lovely. Thank you.
Just Tara had one other question in the chat box I'm going to have a go at, which was if you apply for Nurture, can you also apply for Create? They're assessed completely differently. So they're assessed by different things, but it might be, it would be great initially to think about which one you would rather go for. Which one is the one that is going to is more relevant to you at the moment and is going to help your progress further. Yeah. That's my thought on that one. We have run out of time, but Aisha, the wonderful Aisha, is going to email everybody post this session with all of the details that you need to access the information on our website, to give you all the emails and phone numbers to be in touch, to talk to people, to talk to the fabulous Tanya, Sarah, Aisha, Phil about your application and what you might want to put in, and to set up any times for those interviews in that week before the applications. Thank you all for coming. This is super exciting. And as Tanya said, there is going to be more money coming from Creative Victoria over the coming months that they are desperate to give to deaf and disabled artists. So we will just keep sending that through to you, sending you through the opportunities. And we are always here to support you in applying for that money, whether it's specifically the Accelerate money or money through Creative Victoria. So best of luck, everybody. All the luck in the world with your applications. You're all incredible. Your work is amazing. It sounds like you've got no end of amazing ideas. And I just, wish you the best of luck. Thanks again for coming.